Welcome to Dose of Social, your recipe for social media success. I'm Lindsay Mauk.
I'm Kayla Pearlstein.
And this is Dose of Social. Today's guest is Tara Coomans of Avaans PR. Tara is a wonderful human being. She has lived in several different locations, such as Hawaii, Arizona, California, yes, where we met several years ago. Yes. And so, Tara, tell us a little bit about yourself. Thank you so much for braving the 405 today to come record with us IRL.
Yes, you are so lucky.
We feel very special.
We deeply appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Really, seriously, thank you for having me. I love being with you guys. We have known each other almost 10 years. So I want you to know that because we moved to LA in 2014.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it feels like both forever and not long enough. And to your, it's sort of important to recognize the Hawaii part because that's where I started my company, which I started it as Akamai Marketing, and it was primarily digital communications, very heavy social media. And then when I moved to Los Angeles, I sort of pivoted a little bit into digitally savvy PR. And that ended up being a lot more of the earned media, which I realize now is really the thing that I loved most about social media was organic social. So this is sort of that blend. However, PR is evolving constantly. And, there's this mushy middle of is it paid or is it earned, as we like to say. And so I'm back playing in that sandbox again with Avaans Media and our clients there who are very ambitious companies. People come to us generally with pre-IPO or if they're looking for venture funding. They have a product launch. Those are the types of people that we're typically working with. It's not that we don't work with a more day-to-day type client at all. It's just we tend to attract those clients, which I loved. I love working with those folks. It's hard. I love it.
Yeah, it's also very exciting.
It is.
Sure.
It's super exciting.
Yeah.
Can you also explain the difference between earned, paid, and organic just for people that...
Absolutely. I was thinking about this today. So I think when most people think about PR, they think about it as earned, okay? And generally we talk about that as a journalist is interviewing you. You get on a podcast and there was no monetary exchange or no benefit to anyone, financial benefit to anyone. But PR, of course, is pretty much everything that you do. Right? PR is your reputation management at its core. So that could incorporate social. That certainly incorporates internal communications. It even incorporates your ads. What are your ads saying about you as a company in terms of your reputation? What's the subtext of that? Not just who are you trying to attract to buy from you, but what's the subtext of what you do and what it means to who you are. So it's a very broad definition, but that's the line between earned and paid. Almost everything else that we do is paid. Advertising is paid, right? Mm-hmm. There's sponsored content today that's paid. Affiliate marketing, which is popping up more and more in media outlets, is sort of a combination of earned, paid, but there's definitely a monetary exchange there. So we're dealing with all of these things on the regular, but the earned is generally no monetary beneficiaries.
Thank you for explaining that.
Long story.
Yeah, I think it's important for everyone to understand the differences. And I think sometimes you hear these words and you're like, oh, I don't know what that means. Right. What exactly is earned? And another thing that you mentioned that I just want to touch on too is you talked about affiliate links within journalism and sponsored content. And that's something that it's been around for a couple of years now, but we're seeing it more and more where on the PR side, if you're pitching editors, they want to know if you have an affiliate program they can join. So can you share a little bit about that, Tara, and how it works?
Sure. So, affiliate links, right, are ways for you or whoever the seller is, whoever owns the property, well, let's just say a newspaper in this instance, to get a small commission. And a lot of people, the way that I say it to people is Rakuten, which is a company that runs a lot of ads, is an affiliate program, right? And the way they operate is they give you back the commission, right? You, the buyer. But in the most common way is this link is a link that the outlet the newspaper can use to earn the commission. You, the seller of the product, you, the brand, will provide that discount. And so this is happening. It's important to understand why this is happening because of the bleed between earned and paid. This is happening because news outlets around the United States are suffering from a decrease in revenue that they're really struggling to get past. The advertising model isn't working the way it used to. And so they're being creative. And this is also why sponsored content, you're seeing more and more sponsored content. But there is usually some level of editorial oversight in an affiliate link in a outlet. So a great example of this is Wired by the New York Times. New York Times is most definitely one of the most trusted publications in the country. And so what does that do to their reputation when they use affiliate links in their top 3 mics you would use in podcasting?
Yep.
So the way that is handled is, 1, it is an editorial process of being included. 2, the products are genuinely tested, which means as a brand, you will be expected to provide a sample. And 3, there is a disclaimer at the top of the page generally that says these products have been tested by our editors, but we may receive a commission if you buy off this page. Yep. So it's a full disclosure scenario. I don't know that a lot of people understand exactly what affiliate marketing is and what happens when they click on that link. But at the same time, it's kind of like clicking on any other ad that you might click on, right? You're supporting the organization who's selling it.
So Tara, let's talk a little bit about what you do in a crisis.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
excited for this.
Just to switch gears a little bit, love to chat about what we do in a crisis on the PR side.
Yeah, I think the first step with a crisis is identifying, is it a crisis? It's really, really easy sometimes to get hyped up about a bad comment on your Instagram or one bad mention in one article. Yeah, it stings. It hurts. I think we've all been there. But is that a crisis? Probably not. And so your best bet in that circumstance is just to let it die and not fan the flames. Go on with your credible, amazing self and understand that to some degree, you're not winning unless someone's upset about it. So take the ding and move on with pride. If there's a lesson to be learned out of it, great, learn the lesson. That's amazing. Let's do that. Nobody's perfect. It's okay. A crisis is when your brand is potentially will not survive the ongoing coverage, whether that's online or in media of some sort, the ongoing coverage of something. Crisis could be someone was killed at your plant. That's a pretty horrible crisis. That's a crisis.
Yeah.
Crisis.
It's a tragedy.
It's a tragedy. Yeah. That's a pretty clearly defined one. Is it a crisis if your influencer does something that isn't aligned with your brand guidelines, but you just run an influencer campaign? Yeah, maybe. It very well might be. And so the response to crisis is actually fairly structured. First, you identify, is it a crisis? You identify who the stakeholders are. You identify the level of response and where you should respond and who should respond. Sometimes the CEO should respond. Sometimes the director of marketing should respond. Sometimes the director of finance should respond. It's always somebody internal, almost always someone internal who should respond. There are very, very few circumstances where an external spokesperson should be the one speaking about a crisis. And then where does the apology come from? And then what do you do in the aftermath to make sure that that crisis never happens again? When you talk about who's affected by it, besides the brand, you may be thinking about, we've had several over the last couple of years, very awkward firings over Zoom. and just really insensitive. And who's most affected in that is employees, but also your brand reputation, your future ability to recruit. And so these are examples where, they're unforced errors. If somebody from PR had been sitting at that table and having the discussion about how we're going to handle this really terrible situation that is required of us economically, I think it could have been handled in all of those cases differently. And then the apology. Is the apology heartfelt? Is the apology in line with, appropriate? Right. So your response has to be equal to the uproar. And you really need to take a breath to assess that. The number one thing that you can do, and the thing that everyone hates doing, is have a plan for it. It's sort of like, having a plan for if there's an earthquake here in California. Like, no one really wants to talk about it. No one really wants to have the go bag. But boy, if there's a really severe earthquake, you're going to be real glad you had that conversation. So having a plan is probably your number one insurance policy.
So for small business owners, what would you suggest with when they should come up with a plan, when they should hire a brand reputation specialist?
It's a tough one, right? I think in earliest stages for small businesses, it's okay to have an internal crisis plan without going external, right? You can get lots of samples of crisis plans online, to be totally honest with you. The most important part of it for a small brand is to figure out a reasonably good way to identify who gets involved and who doesn't. And when you create, when you initiate your plan, again, back to a little bit of a judgment moment, it's really hard when you start a company to not take it personally if someone says something on your Instagram, all right? Somebody's trolling you. It's really, really hard not to take it personally. Sometimes at that point, it might make sense to have an independent third party, a trusted community member, a trusted employee, even just a trusted peer who you could go to and say, what do you think? Is this a crisis? And do I need to pull the trigger on my crisis plan? So that's one of the challenges that I think small businesses face is you're the less visible you are, the less likely it is that you're going to have a true crisis, right? It's way more likely that Budweiser or Coca-Cola is going to have a crisis than, Joe's dog food.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. And what would you recommend for a social media manager, for example, who is monitoring a brand page and sees a comment that could potentially be considered a crisis, depending on... We always recommend don't respond right away. Make sure you let the appropriate people know about that before you respond, because we've seen social media managers respond in a way that probably isn't favorable to the business. So what would you recommend to a social media manager in that situation?
So the first step would be to monitor, right? Is this a one-off situation? Two, I would advocate for giving your community and your fans a chance to come to your defense. And right? And so that's going to take a beat. Take a beat. During that beat, you move internally with what would be an appropriate response to this if it does seem to get a little lift, if people continue to pile on and agree with this. But again, you have to look at this. How far is this reaching? Are these bots, right? Are they pretty obvious bots? I mean, sometimes that's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
So, I'm not a fan of deleting things.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, I don't, it just doesn't feel transparent. Again, the reality is that some people are not going to like you.
Can't please everyone. Life in general, right?
I got a whole line of people out the door that feel a little weird about me. So, it just is. That old saying, if you're pissing a bunch of people off, it means you're doing something right. So there's something to that, I think. And with social media, I think we have to be really, it's so easy to get caught up on it because it's so fast moving. But I think we just have to be really conscious of our next steps in those circumstances, because the response could be the thing that flames it more than the original comment.
Yeah.
What a bummer.
Really important to take a breath in those situations and make sure that you bring it to the appropriate people.
Yeah, take a breather.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the flip side of that, what about good press? How could a brand leverage good press for their social media?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's foolhardy, to be honest, to not use your press in your social, right? You, for one, in a PR scenario where it's truly earned, it is a carrot not stick scenario. No PR agency storms the editorial room at a newspaper and says, "You will write about my client," no matter what they say on HBO. Okay, I mean, every time they show something like that, I cringe. So it is a carrot not stick arrangement and relationship already. So that outlet would probably really love it if you would share that they wrote about you.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, wouldn't they love the link? Wouldn't they love the tag? Wouldn't they? Yes, the answer is yes, they would. And they do see that. And they do think about that maybe again in another story, right? So the media relations piece is not just media. It's relations. And so relations is a two-way story. So why wouldn't you use that coverage in your Instagram? Why wouldn't you put a link to it on your website? And by the way, if it's something like a gift guide, right? You can use that next year.
Yeah, why
You
not?
can consider that, content to be evergreen in a lot of ways. And that is something that I think people miss a lot, that a lot of content, unless it's super tied into something really, really newsworthy, it could be used again. Nobody notices this, but I use tons of my content over and over again. Like, just nobody notices because they have lives.
Yeah, and I think, and this is something that we tell our clients all the time, is you feel like it's repetitive because you are close to it.
That's right.
You are the closest to it. No one else is going to notice this. No one else is going to notice this. So take a step back and realize that, and then take a breath.
Exactly. And one of the things about using this kind of content in social is that part of the value of just organic social is the opportunity to sort of pop up in people's feeds on a regular basis. It's not that they remember the content all the time. It's that they see your brand. And when they see your brand, it's just one more tick. It's just one more, what I call drop in the trust bucket or the drop in the awareness bucket. So when you use media, you're leveraging that trust and you're leveraging the brand. So your brand. So you're getting it from three ways. You're expanding your audience when you tag someone. Right. I mean, so you really want to leverage those pieces in whatever place you can. Also, if you're a consumer product, why wouldn't you run an ad that says "as seen in"?
Yep, we do that all the time as a standard practice for our clients.
And do you see a difference? Like, the cost per acquisition is down maybe a little bit, or
I would say it's also just validation for the brand. So we've had a brand that was featured in Oprah's Favorite Things.
Amazing.
Which was wonderful. And something, like you said, repeating that year over year at the holidays, that was something that we always went back to and made sure that we highlighted. Yeah. We make sure that our clients have a press page on a website.
Thank you.
We
highlight all that information.
We tell our clients to always make a big deal of everything. So even if you're mentioned in a gift guide and it's super small, or you're mentioned in an outlet, tag the outlet and reshare it multiple times.
And follow them on social media too.
Yes, follow them.
Because social media is social.
The relations and the social part. What do you know? We just covered it both in 45 seconds. Yeah. I think those are really important places to extend your reach.
And one thing that we also do too with any particular product, if it's been featured in a specific outlet like Travel and Leisure, Marie Claire, whatever it is, we will add that logo on the PDP page too and say "as seen in."
Absolutely.
And for those of you listening who don't know what a PDP page is, that's an e-commerce term for product detail page. So if I was going to go shop online for this jacket, it would be the page where I'd actually see the jacket and see the different photos and views of the jacket and click add to cart and check out.
Very few brands remember to do that. And it's shocking, really, when you think about how easy that is.
Yeah, so if we were going to create a checklist right now for brands of how to leverage their PR coverage for social and just for marketing in general. So we'd say website, press page on your website.
Press page on your website, include the logo on the front of your website, I would say.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right? On the product page, most certainly. I would do a really fun reel about it in some way, right? Reels have great lifespan, so make that fun, give that some energy. Of course, share it on your stories with a link. Of course, put it on your static post page, right? And again, reuse it. This is content you earned media. So celebrate that. It's not easy, right? I estimate about 1% of brands get media coverage.
Wow.
Right. So if you don't celebrate that, you're really missing out on the fun part of running a business, man. I mean, that's the fun. And I know sometimes it feels like as a brand, it took so long. You sent in the sample, 3 months ago, and they interviewed you 6 weeks ago, and you moved on with your life, and it's already, yeah, but this is awesome. This is great. It's going to give you leverage. It gives you trust. It gives you awareness. It gives you all the things you need at the top of that funnel to make the decision-making process smoother, faster, and more intentioned for the buyer. And you win over the long term, right? Another thing that's great about earned media in general is that it tends to have a very long lifespan. Mm-hmm. So celebrate that throughout the entire lifespan.
Once you're featured in Oprah's Daily, you can always say that you've been featured in Oprah's Daily.
Yeah, it never goes, there's no expiration date on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Great
win.
point. Mm-hmm. Win-win. Awesome.
Yeah.
What about a business owner pitching an outlet directly?
Yeah, I mean, I tell people all the time, fundamentally what we do actionably is not impossible. It's not even hard. It's nuanced. It takes an awareness, right? But if you're looking to pitch an outlet, the way to approach any pitch is one, make it relevant. So if you know who you're pitching, and you should, don't just send a, pitch to editor at New York Times. It just gets buried and it's just not useful. You should have the journalist in mind. You should know who they are. Chances are pretty good that you can dig up their email address without a ton of work. Now, yes, that's a manual job. Yes, it is. And yes, PR agencies have these huge databases. Yes, we do. But if you really want to do it, find the journalist, find their email, and send them a really nice letter. And to be honest with you, I think a lot of times if you make it respectful, relevant, and interesting, I think a lot of journalists are really open to hearing directly from brands, right? It's fun as a journalist to discover a brand. It's fun. And there is a little bit of tension between journalists and PR agents, right? I mean, we're constantly like we are always asking for something. We're always asking for something. And an owner doesn't have that reputation. An owner just has the reputation of, I'm just here trying to sell myself. But it's the relevance. It's the, intentionality around the pitch. It should not be much longer than 150 words would be long.
Yeah.
You should probably reference something that they've written and talk about why you think that what you're sending them is relevant. You should follow up once or twice.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But remember, they don't owe you anything. They don't owe you anything. So you don't come at it with an expectation that they should cover you. The other is the reason for coverage is not that it's the greatest product ever. You really got to identify why this is a newsworthy piece, a newsworthy product. And chances are there is a newsworthy element to it, I bet, but you really have to put that into play. And that's the nuance that I think people may miss when they do direct pitching.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. Thank you. I think also thinking about it from a local perspective too,
Yes.
for brands, if they're looking to pitch a local news outlet, this is something definitely to consider, not necessarily the New York Times per se.
Yeah, local outlets are great, right? Because one of the challenges with like big national brands and getting local coverage is that they're not relevant locally. But if you're pitching local outlets, you know, even the small freebie newspapers that end up on all our porches or, you know, those things, they're looking for a local angle. They're looking for the local story, and you're likely to get more coverage. You know, if you are, you know, Tara's glasses manufacturer, right? I might get covered this piece in maybe a wired piece or something, but I might get a whole profile about how I was founded and why I was founded and what my values are in a local publication. So again, that's great. I think it's a great place to start. All journalists are overwhelmed right now. Like everyone is working without the resources that they had even pre-pandemic. But everybody would really like to do something interesting and fun on occasion. You know, a lot of media is really heavy right now, and so giving people a little fun in their life is nice.
Agreed. Thank you so much, Tara. This has been so awesome and so helpful, and thanks for sharing your wisdom with all of us.
Thank you for having me. I love seeing you two always, and I can't wait to spend time listening to your podcast. I'm so excited. You guys are so great. So thank you for having me.
How can people find you? How can they learn
Very
more?
nice. Thank you. You can visit our website. It's avaans media.com. We'd love to see you there.
All right. Thank you so much, Tara.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening to Dose of Social. Thanks, everyone. Bye.